You guys all have 3-minute openers, and we'll start with Craig, since you're sitting right there.
Good. Thank you. So my name's Greg Johnston. Probably a lot of you already know me. I lifelong resident of Alcona County. Actually, fourth generation. We have a Centennial farm we live on. My wife and 4 kids. I have 4 children that went through 3 are still in Alcona. 1 just graduated from Bible College in West Virginia, my daughter. Been here all my life, except for a few years when I was in college, learning to fly airplanes, and then ended up being a farmer, so however that works. I was a commissioner, I was elected commissioner in 2014. I served for 6 years, 4 years as chairman. Enjoyed it. I'll go back in my little start on why I ended up going in as a commissioner, or one of the reasons. I was actually at a meeting when Sean Thornton was the superintendent, and I sat and watched this meeting, and for lack of a better way, it was an absolute chaos. The meeting, the way it was run, there was arguing, it was embarrassment, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I can't believe that this is the way meetings are run, and there was just a lot of bickering between the board, and it was kind of ugly. So when the opportunity came up, I was asked, and I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd like to see something change there. So I got a chance to get in there, made some changes as chair, and glad that some of the things that we did, and lost my primary to Bill Thompson back in 2020 by 9 votes. It was kind of a weird year, as you all know. 2020 was a little different, so we did do a recount, got 1 vote out of it. I had 9 family and friends that didn't vote for me, just because they didn't know there was a primary, so we would have won the primary. Did mount a write-in campaign, probably got more write-in votes than I think anybody has in a write-in campaign. I think I got almost 300 votes. So thought I'd try it again and give it another shot. Bob and I have talked, and we both have an interest in it, and we both are probably really similar in the things that we want to see happen there. So that's my spiel.
All right.
Stan, if everyone's gonna sit, I'll stand. Dr. Bob Turek, my wife and I live in Harrisville Township, right next to the BP. We've lived here 20 years. Born in Iowa, lived in Colorado. That's where we met before we came here. Worked there for 10 years before we came here. I was hoping nobody that watches on Facebook or here is expecting any kind of contentious controversy here or gotchas, because it isn't going to happen for me. I voted for Craig several times. If he wins the primary, I will support him fully. So there is absolutely no conflict. I did not know he was running for commissioner when I put my name in. Those of you in the Republican group know that my whole goal was to get somebody in there in a primary so that the current commissioner from our district would not have clear sailing to get elected. You can add my wife and I to the list of people who did not vote for you in the primary. We feel horrible about it. We were out of town. We did not go to the trouble of getting absentee ballots. So add us to that list. If we had all done what we should have done and been as active as people are now, we wouldn't be having this debate. He would be our commissioner running for. So somebody said, why are you going to put signs out? I said, I'm not going to put signs out. He's not my opponent. He's my teammate. Okay. All we need to do is really make sure what happened to him 2 years ago doesn't happen again. We get the vote out, whether it be in the primary or the general election. Our opponent is in November. He's not my opponent. We've talked already. Neither of us knew that he was going to put our name in. All I'm glad is that in November, we will have 1 true Republican on the ballot for your vote.
All right, thank you very much. Gary?
Well, Craig had given Terry and I some information, back 2 years ago about Alcona County and how, who was the treasurer, Tom Katona, had taken the money, and he was kind of criticizing Kevin Boyette because he said, well, Kevin said, well, Alcona County elected us just like you elected him just like us. I gotta say, Kevin was right. There's a problem. The problem exists Maybe not so much in this room as it does in Alcona County. This man held public office, if you read the Times article. He was incompetent. He had been already caught one time with embezzling funds and was asked not to do it again. And everybody voted for him. He ran unopposed. And that's the problem we've got with this county. Finding people that are interested, that are willing to go after and do something. And Craig can tell you I was a real quiet commissioner. Okay? When I saw that people's rights were being infringed on, I stepped up immediately and said no. I've even gone against all 4 board members when I believed I was in the right. And I will never back down as long as I'm in the right. If anybody's got a gripe about something I vote or something I say, you got one option. You get a copy of your Constitution, you get a copy of your Declaration of Independence, and you confront me on it. If you can't confront me on those 2 items, you haven't got an argument I'm willing to listen to. Because that is my job. I know one elected official, very good friend of mine, their belief is they're a representative, they represent the people. That is wrong. We represent you, but we have a guideline that we're stuck with. And that is we swear an oath to that document. And that's what we do. I can say right now that the person that has inhabited my seat has not stood up for anybody's rights. And I gotta tell you, if you take a look at the YouTube of the last meeting, when I put that resolution forward about having access to the Secretary of State's offices, this man will constantly come up and say, I second that motion. Between Adams putting my motion on the table and cricket sounding off for the next 10 seconds, Dan Gothier was the one that seconded it. Terry's the only one that voted for it, besides Ab. Everybody else turned it down. And again, this is your rights to be able to access that office. There's no excuse for the way the Secretary of State's office is running. I am running, I'm going to wrap it up right here.
Okay.
I am running, again, for this office, and I'm looking for people that are going to support me because I do things according to the Constitution. If you want status quo government, you're more than welcome to keep what you got.
Okay, thank you. So we'll, like I said, we're going to start out with a little bit of a low ball. First of all, have either of you 3 gentlemen seen 2,000 Mules?
I have not.
You have not. Have you?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay. 2,000 Mules.
I know it's about, yeah.
You know what it's about? Okay. So the general question, and we're going to do a round robin and let everybody answer. Do you believe that there was election fraud in November 2020? Yeah, 2020. And do you think it was large scale enough to demand a full forensic audit and perhaps even a decertification of the election results here in Michigan? And we'll start out with Bob.
Yes, yes and yes. I believe there was fraud. I believe there's enough to certify. I was in front of the commissioners as well, putting forth the resolution as well as the grassroots group, probably about a year ago, asking them, the commissioners, to do that exact thing. Authorize a full forensic audit that would be at 0 cost to the county, 0 cost to the taxpayers. They, of course, did not approve that. Wasn't quite clear cut. They brought in the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney said that in his opinion, there was even though it says in the Michigan Constitution that anyone can request an audit, his opinion was that the Secretary of State is reserving that just as her sole right. And so his recommendation was to the county commissioners that they were not authorized to okay a full forensic audit. But the group, Lisa and I, kind of put a bunch of people together, and we actually got the voter rolls for every township, the people who voted and the complete rolls, and we compared who voted to who was registered. We found in almost every township there was maybe 6 to 7 discrepancies. We turned those over to Stephanie Eller, and she could rectify those. She said to people, but as we all know, we never thought there was fraud on the count of any of the township clerks or the county clerk. It's the machines. That's what we've always said. 2,000 Mules talks about a little something else. the machine. So one of my things, it isn't the number one thing I would do on the first day as commissioner, but I would certainly revisit why we're using machines in Alcona County and try to get those removed. Unless we have some kind of document that we've filed or signed with Dominion or Election Source that we have to use those machines, I would want to go back to paper ballots. So
Okay, thank you. Gary,
The question again, because I'm sorry.
the question again. Do you believe that there was election fraud on a large scale, and would you support a full forensic audit or even decertifying the
Okay, I'll back up. On a large scale, I'm not so sure, but this election was so close. You know, all it takes is just a little tweaking here and there in a few little spots. You know, somebody looks good, but not enough to question, but just enough to change the margins. I don't think they're that stupid that they would have, you know, wholesalely done it. But yeah, I have a problem. I mean, I've talked to people that have worked in Detroit, and his comment was, he left thank you notes on the headstones for all those that came out and voted the next day in Detroit. So we know we have problems, and the problem is it needs to be fixed. It needs to be addressed. The vote needs to be what our founders considered it, which was a duty. And a duty wasn't something you ought to do, it was something you were legally required to do. It was an important part of your being a citizen of this country. So that is a very important thing, and it doesn't bode well if people don't trust the process. And, you know, I appreciate all the work Bob and Lisa have done on this, and I really resent what the prosecutor had said. I don't care what the Secretary of State says. You know, we have independent clerks, they should be able to do their job. And I'll shorten it if that's what I'm supposed to think.
So I would probably go along with what Gary said. I don't know if it was widespread, if it was as widespread as what some of the accusations are. I think there was certainly, as the anecdotal evidence was, that Trump was certainly, way more people were supporting him. We could just see that on some of his rallies. So when I saw that it had gone the other way, it didn't go the other way in our county. I think one of the first things, I was commissioner at the time, one of the first things I did was went and talked to Stephanie, and I said, are we good? Are we good in this county? Because Antrim County had come out, I think that night, and said, you know, hey, there's a problem with our machines. And I asked Stephanie, I said, where are we at on this? She had called all the clerks, and they double checked and triple checked and made sure. I know that the forensic audit is still much more in depth than it would be what they did that night. So the short answer is, I think there was probably some shenanigans. And as Gary said, we were close enough that it could have swayed or changed some things around. Whether it was widespread enough, I don't know. I've only seen a couple of the reviews or I haven't seen the movie 2,000 Meals of Trailers and stuff like that. So it's cell phone footage and who was there. This was in Georgia, right? That was their main thing.
Several states.
Several states, that there was
Michigan,
multiple people going to the
Michigan
same
was
voting thing. So one of the issues is in our county, townships are what run the voting. I mean, the townships decide who they're gonna, or how they're gonna do their voting. Stephanie can give them insight or give them guidance, but at the end of the day, you know, we gotta work with townships and make sure this gets done. I know most of our township workers in Harrisville Township and the township or the city, my wife did it for, I think, a couple of years. They do a good job. So I don't think, as Bob said, I don't think there's anybody that we're accusing in our county, any local people that were doing anything that was wrong. But certainly, could there have been something IT-ish and technological that did? Yes, I think there could have been. Yeah, so.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to ask you if you have a question for Bob.
Okay.
Pay attention to Gary, just in case.
Yeah, okay, so Bob, we have, so Alcona County has pension plan throughout our county. Our county employees, both, we have several unions, and MERS, which is a defined benefit plan, that defined benefit pension plan, has been in place for 25, 30 years. We have been running in the red on this fund in this pension fund for, and probably the last 15 years. It gets worse every year. There was probably when I was commissioner, there was maybe even talk of the emergency manager would have to come on board here into our county because the state was starting to set some guidelines about how far you could go on your funding in order to continue operating. Have you given any thought and any idea of what would be a remedy for that, or what would be a fix?
What I thought was interesting is that when the Alcona paper kind of contacted all four of us, we all brought up as one of our main concerns was that exact thing, in particular concerning the deputies, retaining our deputies, not only their salary, but their benefit plan does not allow them to want to stay here. We've been lucky, we were at a commissioners meeting, and I don't know if I told a lot of you or if a lot of you know them, where the sheriff came and said they were one deputy away from losing 24/7 coverage for the county. And the only way that they hadn't is they were asking deputies to go work overtime and give up vacations. We've been very lucky in Alcona County that several of these deputies have a family connection here, that they want to be here in Alcona County, or else they definitely would have left because greener pastures elsewhere, more money and more benefits. What I think is when all four people bring that up, only one of the people, Commissioner Small, and I'm not picking on him, he might be a very nice man, but this problem has been going on for a long time. It was going on for the last 2 years of his term. What did the commissioners do during that time to try to correct that? It's one thing to say, okay, well, here's a problem. What did you do to it? Did you predict that problem? Did you do anything to fix that problem when you were in office? And if not, why would we re-elect you again? What has changed that now, as soon as you get elected, now you're going to change it? Well, why didn't you change it during your 2-year term? So I don't have any grand realizations other than when 4 commissioners or 4 people running for the commissioner side put that as their number one priority. It has to be just that, has to be number one priority, public safety issue. I'm not sure that people know how bad the situation is, but I don't have a direct answer for you other than I know that it's number one on my list.
Okay, I think this is a very good question, and I would like you to answer that one about the pension plans.
Well, this is the problem I've got. And it comes back to villages. We put things on property tax. And I have a real problem with things going on people's property tax. Because basically this country was built on the fact that people have the right to own property and to exercise their liberties on their property. Okay? Now, having a senior center eating into your millages, having veterans eating, and I have nothing against veterans. It's just, look, that was an agreement they had with the federal government, and they've got problems, and the problems is throwing money at it at 3 different divisions of government, federal, state, and local. You need to address the federal stuff at the federal. But anyways, you got that. You've got MSU, we put that stuff on there. When we asked for an operating millage to give people basic government, everybody said no. I'm thinking, wait a minute. That's what we're called to do as government. See, government's only designed for one thing. It's not designed to take care of people. Government is designed to protect everybody's inalienable rights. That's written in our founding document, the Declaration of Independence. And an inalienable right, is keeping you from stealing other people's property. So having your governmental system in place and being able to support itself, having fire, police, and EMS, that all comes under the domain of what government is supposed to provide. It is that fact, your existence. Safety nets were supposed to be the church, and government doesn't do them very well. As a matter of fact, you spend a lot of money and you get very little results. And I'll stop it there. I don't have to listen to the phone again.
3 seconds.
Hey, not bad.
Nice, fantastic.
Can I answer that? or-
Yes,
So,
yes,
I'm
please,
gonna-
yes.
So, notwithstanding what Gary said, I agree with most of what he said there, and Bob, maybe we missed a little bit on what I was asking. So, I'll put the numbers to it. So our county is probably $5 million in the hole on our pension fund. That's gotta be made up at some point. That money has to come in. As we continue, so when I was commissioner, we did institute a policy that all new hires would not receive the defined benefit pension. That stopped new hires, but we have still a lot of current hires that are on the defined benefit program. And everybody know what defined benefit is compared to, so defined benefit is like what GM would have. So you're guaranteed an X amount of dollars based on your last 5 years of average compensation with the county, no matter what. This isn't a 401, this is an actual pension. So probably 80% of the folks in the courthouse have that. The deputies do not, the sergeants and sheriff and the elected officials do. So that's a tremendously expensive program. Anybody who works in the private sector, pensions are gone. They don't do pensions anymore because they're too expensive. So what we have is a dilemma as it's coming faster and faster because as wages increase each year and the big raises they gave last year only add to that liability that we're gonna have in the future on this defined benefit. When I came in and I remember looking at all these numbers and healthcare, I'm gonna bring up Bill Thompson, so he was on the board at the time. They had negotiated contracts with unions where employees were paying nothing on their healthcare, everything was free, it was way out of whack with what the private sector was doing. The pension plan is upside down, so we got a problem there, and wages were a little off. So we had 3 things we had to deal with, and you can't deal with them all at once. So the plan was, let's get healthcare taken care of, which we did. That was a battle, if Gary remembers some of it. The second one is gonna have to be the pension plan. So I don't see how we're gonna be able as a county. And then there's been discussions, I'm sorry, can you keep going?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I've heard the commissioners are talking about, they had somebody in at the last meeting talking about a 457 plan, which is a public 401 plan. Because they recognize that we can't afford it. This is hard stuff to tell employees who've been there 10 years that you're gonna lose your pension and we're gonna go to a 401. But as a county, this has to be run as a business, and that's really the commissioner's job, is to run the business of the county. And that, I'm gonna put it against the boards before we were on the board. They didn't do anything about this. Most other counties ended these things 15 years ago because they saw the handwriting on the wall that we are not gonna be able to afford these pension plans. So when I get back, or I hope to get back in, that'd be a big area that I wanna work on, is we got the healthcare taken care of. They're now more in line with what everybody pays in the private sector, but we gotta work on that pension plan.
Okay.
The commissioners, just real quick, the commissioners got a real break this last year because if you all don't know it, our jail is no longer in operation. So there was a huge amount of money left over, so the question is have they been wisely spending it? And that's what we're gonna find out.
I'll add one thing. At the
Okay.
commissioners meeting where the sheriff spoke, he said the deputies have less of a retirement plan than the lowliest new hire at secretary off the street who just gets hired at the courthouse. Absurd. That they, who don't work as long, have the type of job that they have to have not even equal to the retirement plan of somebody else. It can't be, we can't have that.
Okay. All right, thank you, guys. And we'll move on to you. We'll take one of your questions that you have for Craig.
This might be one of the only things that we would disagree on, possibly disagree on. I see no way that I would not vote to return the PILT funds to the townships. PILT is payment in lieu of taxes that the townships usually get if they have property that's owned by the federal government that they can't collect a property tax on. Federal government gives them, but now it's going through the commissioners, and the commissioners did not give that back to the townships. The commissioners held that back. So now 3 of these townships, Curtis, Millen, and Mitchell, had 15, 20% of their revenue, of their operating budget is held by the commissioners. So I see no way that I would not vote to return that money back to those townships. How would you feel about that same thing?
So I was a big part of that. In fact, I went to every supervisor when we did that and sat down around the kitchen table and took the beating because the previous super chairman did not send the letter out to let them know. So I went around and I sat down and talked to them. We tried to come up with a percentage wise. In 2018, when we did that, so we were in a situation where we were deeply in the red in the budget. And the county is the only provider of law enforcement in the county. Multiple other things that the county provides that townships don't do. All the other counties around us have township or city police. That's our big bill. You mentioned the jail. In fact, I was in support of closing the jail. The sheriff brought that up when he came in to say we're gonna shut the jail down. And he said, Commissioner Johnston told me to do this 6 months ago. I didn't agree with him. Now we should have done it when he told him. So the law enforcement in our county is a huge expense. So that being said, we needed the money to pay those bills. We needed the money to continue law enforcement. It was $50,000. The deal was made, and we don't even know when it was made. The money actually does come to the county. It never did go to the townships. It only went to the townships through an agreement that was made with the county and the townships. We don't even know where it was. Couldn't find anything written down why it was done. Most other counties do not give that money to the townships. Most of them keep it for themselves. We told them that this is what we had to do, this is where our bills are. Of course, it wasn't received well. My intention always and all along when we did that was that when things get better and times get better, we can kick it back and do that. I think times have gotten better. I think there's money available, so I would support putting some of it back. I think they're gonna approve a 25%. They were getting 50% of the bill, which is about $50,000. So they're gonna get $25,000 or $28,000 instead of the full 50. The bottom line was, I mean, that money, when I was the commissioner, when I was the chair, we were frugal. We were trying to cut everywhere we possibly could. And in order to keep deputies on the road and keep cars running, we needed every nickel we could find, and that was an area. There was a couple of things like that had been on the docket and on the books for years that they needed to address, but nobody wanted to take the hard step to do it. And so.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll.
Definitely, please, because this has hit my district. And believe me, I fought. And this is the big issue. The state of Michigan has absconded with lands in Greenbush, Alcona, and all these other townships. And that money, by law, is split 50-50. But to the other townships that are insensitive to the fact that you got Millen Township, which is 62% stolen federal land. You've got Mitchell that's 33%, but it's a double township size. I forgot what my Cato had. I know this hurt Jogi real bad, and it's 45% in Curtis. To me, it is unjust that 50% does not go. You would not steal, and everybody would say, well, you gotta give the state bill to everybody else. But the federal bill, we can screw people on, and I'm gonna tell you, the original goal when we didn't get that millage was we were gonna pull the school resource officer and 2 commissioners who were worried about their jobs, about getting recalled. So the only ones that got screwed was the west end of the district. And that was a shame. It is unjust because how can you have Millen Township, for every dollar they collect in revenue is only 38 cents because the other property is not taxable because it's federal. That's the issue. And that money should have never been taken from that district. That is, to me, theft and a travesty.
And I will also have you answer your own question.
Well, it's fascinating to me that theft is theft, whether the state says it's okay or whether Lansing says it's okay. if this is money that these townships need to maintain their pavilion, Millen can't repair a pavilion that their citizens use. I mean, we take it for granted here in District 2. I mean, we can use ball courts or tennis courts or whatever. Gas prices are $5 a gallon. I mean, people aren't traveling as much. You want to have amenities in your own township. They can't even use their own pavilion without a fear of trees falling on it or the foundation rotting. I hate to think everything has to come down to money, and I know money is a major issue, but this is money these townships need to survive. And I think if our district, Harrisville Township and Haines and City of Harrisville, they knew how these other townships are suffering, I don't think our constituency would be in favor of holding those funds.
Okay.
Real quick, I'm sorry, this is real quick on the whole thing that's important.
I'm gonna
No,
do one thing real quick here. So this was one of my questions in
oh, it
regards
was
to.
taken away, the PILT money was taken away recently by a resolution, Kevin Boyette did it. And now they voted to restore it by motion. That is the most sloppiest and worst thing to do, because if you put it in a resolution, it would take 4 commissioners to say they're gonna rescind that resolution. So the man that thought he did a real great job on it that's not here tonight, I mean, he didn't do his homework at all.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. So one of the questions that I had would be how best to use the PILT funds and whether or not to return them. I just want to get clarification, okay? So you would like to return 50% back to the townships
I
across
would
the
have no
board?
problem returning the way it was. So one thing that maybe if you understand, payment in lieu of taxes, and this is one of the plans that I brought forth to them, although Mitchell Township would have lost more money, Millen was kind of on the edge. So when it says payment in lieu of taxes, you actually have to have millage on your tax roll in order to say you lost taxes. So Mitchell had very little millages on their roll. So if you take a percentage of what they would have gotten, what they're losing, Millen has a little bit more, but if you don't put a millage on your ballot and you don't have a millage, then you're not losing any taxes. So it's payment in lieu of taxes. So what my proposal was to the townships was, we'll take a percentage. If you have road millage of $1.50, if you have your operating millage of 0.5, we'll take that percentage and then we'll divide it out and you get a percentage of that. Because the county loses it too. The county loses it to their operating fund, the library fund, all the other ones, they're losing. So it was gonna be a percentage. It got kind of lost in the weeds. I thought it would work out well, but I would have no problem putting it back to where it was.
I'm taking it you prefer to give it back entirely, but based on percentage.
Well, no, originally it was
Land?
at 50% because that's what you do with the state swamp taxes, with 50-50. The county gets 50%, the township gets 50%. What I would be in favor of right now is back payment until they're made whole for what they've lost. And then the 50-50 split. I'm sorry, again,
Okay.
this is property that should be taxable. And since the federal government owns it, it's not taxable.
Correct. And
I would be in favor of returning it to the maximum. I would not be in favor of reimbursing them for whatever they didn't receive for the last several years. I would like to know from Commissioner Johnston, your recommendation, why wasn't that followed up? Which commissioners did not support that? Where did that go? A reasonable solution that you put forth, why didn't that happen?
Well, it was a pretty contentious time. I invited all the supervisors in and they were very upset about it. But again, we were looking at a ton of red ink and it came down to, we've got to provide law enforcement, we've got to provide some of these things. So there wasn't, for lack of a better word, there was not going to be any appeasing them unless they got what they wanted, and the percentage wise wasn't really an interest.
And you would think now, since they have seen what the alternative to your plan was, they would be more amenable to that.
I think 50% sounds nice and clean and easy, so it was, so what the other one did was, so when you do it on a percentage basis, it requires you as a township to go and ask your people for millage money. You can't say I'm losing tax revenue if I don't have any millage, right? Does that make sense? So the government, okay, so if I have a 2 mil millage on in my township, and I can't collect any millage from federal lands, because I got 2 mills, but all them 64% acres in Millen Township, I can't collect any taxes from them, right?
I have to ask one question,
Yeah.
doesn't it come out of the property taxes? Isn't that, as opposed to a millage? just
Well, that's where your
property
property taxes are, is a millage. Your property taxes
Okay.
are a millage.
Okay,
So if Millen Township had a 2 mil road tax on it, so that 2 mills, they cannot collect it on 64% of the federal lands because they don't pay taxes, right? So they should be entitled to some money back because of the money they can't collect, right? Does that make sense? Now, if they don't have any millage on and they're not losing any, so that's why it's called payment in lieu of taxes. You're not entitled to it if you're not charging any taxes. So if they had no millage on their ballot, if they had no millages at all, then they're not losing anything to the government because they're not collecting any taxes on it. Does that make sense? So if you have millage as a township, then you should be entitled to payment from the government that isn't paying your taxes.
okay. We will move on, let's see.
Well, I guess I got a question on that one, because I guess this is what doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
Because, you buy property up here as a hunter, and you're gonna hunt the property, you don't build a cabin, you don't build anything on it, you drop a trailer. That guy still pays a property tax, because he has land within the county. So what I'm saying is the federal government has land within the county, they've got roads that go through it, all this stuff still gotta be maintained. To me, it makes no sense that there isn't any tax money for it.
So then any local property tax you're gonna pay, if you live in a township where you have no road tax, no fire tax, what other tax? There's no public safety tax, all you're gonna do is pay, you're on the Mankato board, all you're gonna do is pay the county or the township's operating millage, which is 0.45 at most, 0.45 of a mill. That's the only property tax you're gonna pay to that township. Now, you're gonna pay a 4.7 to the county, you're gonna pay a county millage, but when it comes to township taxes, it's fairly minimal when it comes to that.
yeah, that's the difference there is county taxes versus township property taxes. Man, it's complex crap. If you guys ever wanna run for trustee, be prepared. Holy moly, what a learning curve this has been. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, I'll throw us a low ball since we've been talking about some really hard hitting things. In regards to resolutions and petitions that have come before the commissioners in the past, how likely are you to support the various and sundry petitions and resolutions that would potentially come before you? And we'll start with Gary on this one. As an example, decertify Michigan, a resolution to clear the January 6th political prisoners, of which Ryan Kelly was arrested as an insurrectionist. Would you be willing to support the resolutions and perhaps petitions that come from this body, the Alcona County Republicans?
I'm gonna say, no, I would support anybody putting a resolution
Okay.
on the county commission table. I have a problem with Robert's Rules of Order. And the problem with Robert's is you can't speak against a resolution that's coming on the table. To me, I would like to bring all resolutions to the table, let people have a voice, weigh them out constitutionally. And if they're, because I believe, we're in office, and a resolution, people say, well, it doesn't do much. Unless you got the county a lot of attention back in 2020 when you know the resolution. I got the county plenty of attention on the LGBTQ thing when Gretchen Whitmer decided she was going to redefine sex and executive directors, a resolution may not seem like much, but it sends a message and it's a voice. And then sometimes that voice resonates with another county. And that's how you generate support, that's how we get things made known in Lansing. Because you don't have a voice as much. When you're county commissioner, you get just a little bit bigger of a soapbox. And that little bit bigger of a soapbox amplifies the constituent's voice. So I'm for bringing them all forward. You want to bring me one on tree logging? Okay, I'll put it on the table. I may not vote for it, but I'll put it on the, because I think people have, people have a right to have their opinion voiced.
Okay,
And they have the right to be yes or no.
all right, thank you.
Close enough?
Yeah,
I'd probably in Gary's camp on this, and I actually lived it, because Gary brought a lot of resolutions. And if you saw my emails and you heard the phone calls that I would get, why are you letting him do that? And I said, first of all, I'm not letting him do anything. This is the way we run. This is a democracy. He's a member of our board, and he has every right to bring forth anything he wants, as does any other member. If he has support, we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna vote on it. I was pretty shocked, some people that I've known and respect would say things like when the LGBTQ thing, or any of these other ones that were definitely touchy. You shouldn't even let them bring that up. You shouldn't even let them hear it. And I'm like, we can't do that. That's not America. I mean, we're 5 adults. We can sit here and have a conversation. We may disagree on it, and I may vote no on it, but it really sent a wrong message to me that we don't even want to entertain the thought. And I wouldn't agree with that. I'm the same way. Bring it forward. Let people say what they want to say.
sounds good. How about you, Bob?
Well, as you all might know, I was in front of the commissioners presenting a resolution in a shortened form that they would not force any employee or any contractor to have a shot, have a vaccine in order to keep their employment. In other words, they would not fire an employee for not getting the shot. This poll showed that over 90% of Republicans were in favor of not firing employees or contractors who didn't have a vaccine. A majority of Democrats were not in favor of that. 3 times, despite trying to make slight changes to get that passed, 3 times it would not pass our Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Small voted against it every 3 times. Commissioner Thompson from District 2 voted against it all 3 times. And Adam Brady voted against it all 3 times. This was supported by over 90% of Republicans. They still, all 3 of those members who are claimed to be Republicans, none of them would vote on it. And you know what was even worse? They never said why. Wouldn't say why. And that was the thing I thought was the worst. That go ahead and put your opinion out. Say, I don't think I'm going to support this for this. They never said. They wanted to, us maybe go and ask them after the session or go in the back room and they would tell us why. That's not how I operate. That's not how democracy is. Say what you're going to say how you feel it, write out in public and let everybody know. That was the thing that bothered me the most. I know the grassroots group put forth a resolution that was so elaborate and so detailed that they also turned that down. So obviously, I'm a big fan of the resolution. Resolutions, by the way, we weren't asking them to do anything that they weren't already doing. This has been their policy for years and years and years. They don't require vaccines. They wouldn't even put their name to a resolution of something that they're already doing. The resolution has no force of law. It can be changed at any time. They still wouldn't do it. So that, to me, not only the 3 Republicans out of the 5 would vote against this, but wouldn't ever say why, what the reason was.
And just real quick, because I want to add one thing to his thing about these, you know, when the board operated prior to the new board coming in, sometimes we would discuss it with the resolution writer. That hasn't happened. And there were times we'd even tweak them. I think the 2A people know exactly how far you can tweak those.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Where do I want to go next? We've talked a lot about budgets. Let's do the building one. So, the county building currently has a check-in.
Thank
You have to-
you, by the way, for calling it the county building. I hate courthouse.
Okay. It's got a check-in, you gotta get your little picture taken, you gotta put all your information in there, say where you're going, and essentially get yourself magically buzzed in. As this is a county building, it is a public building, it should be open to the public. Do you believe that this check-in is an invasion of privacy? Do you know what they do with the information? And do you think the courthouse should be held liable should any of that data go missing?
I'll take
Negative.
that. I'll answer that. Did anybody get a questionnaire, or did any of the commissioners ask you if you wanted that done? Did anybody of you hear if there was any concrete threats made against any employee? How did it get done? When you're a commissioner, I understand the commissioners are given leeway to pay bills, okay? You don't need to have to talk to us, the constituency, to pay a $10 bill for a plumber. Don't you think that's something that the public would have wanted to know? Do you know that no other counties do this? They laugh at us. I talked to a commissioner from Montmorency County. He said, "What are you guys doing? How did it happen?" Obviously, I'm not in favor of it, and it would be one thing I would drop initially. And I say that knowing there very well might be employees there who are in favor of that. But the employees work for us. That is the people's courthouse. We own that. We have right to be there. I would immediately rescind that, and I would say, thank you, Dave, or whoever, John, for doing this. Your time was for naught. It's not gonna go forward with it, if I was.
We'll move to Craig next, and then we'll.
Well, the first time I did, I refused to put my face in front of the camera, I was gonna get my picture taken, and I didn't. They spent a fair amount of money on those things. There is it is a courthouse, and it is a county building. So there's two entities that actually reside in that building. There's the public offices of our county, who are our elected officials, and then there's the district court. So district court runs by all different rules, and they can, through SCAO, which is the state court administrator's office, they can say, you will do this, or you're gonna be in trouble. You need to secure this building better, and I didn't start it, but I was a chairman of the security committee, and that's probably where this came out of, these kiosks, is that, hey, this would be a great idea as a security issue. My alternative was, that wasn't even an alternative, we didn't even know these kiosk things existed. So Iosco County has done it. They actually had a portable metal detector, because there have been issues when court is in session. There have been threats on the judge, there have been threats on defendants, there have been threats on plaintiffs. So during court time, you can get a rollout metal detector, and you can station a deputy there, and they make sure the court is secure and everything is fine. And then when you're done with court, we have court 3 days a week, you put that thing away, and then the building's open the way it normally always was. That was what I would be more in favor of. I'm not in favor of having to thumbprint or face whatever to get in to go see the treasurer, go see the register of deeds. I think that's a little overreach, and it's a little much to have to do that. I do understand in courts in session, we've had some pretty major trials where there was some serious considerations for threats. You might have to go through some hoops in order to get in the county building on those days. But that's kind of part of being in our society at this time, so.
Okay.
Shut up.
Here we go.
Sat on the board of county commissioners, been chastised by the press because we wouldn't open the building to, I wasn't for opening the building to the public for the Harrisville thing, okay? Because we have to have a janitor there, all these people are coming in. That is the county's property. I am for the county being able to use that building. It is the county building, it's not the courthouse. I have had a solution and had somebody even echo it to me, and I kind of like it. Since the jail is no longer a jail, it'd be a great place for the courtroom to be. She can have all the security she wants over there. That is the people's building. People have a right to come in and do business. And what I really have a problem with is when the court tells us who can carry in that building and not. That should be up to the county commissioners. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're a licensed concealed carry holder and you work in that building, you should be able to protect yourself. There shouldn't be this problem about security. You know, look at what's happened in all these gun-free zones, like schools. Can anybody think of any examples of gun-free zones in the last couple of weeks? I mean, come on, guys. This is the county building. It belongs to us. Believe me, if Bob gets on the board of commissioners and the first piece of business is take those kiosks down, they're gone.
Can I have a follow-up? Your reasonable suggestion, why wasn't it passed? Who on the board,
Well, we didn't have the kiosk, so at that, we didn't have the money. I mean, the rolling metal detector was $7,000, and you gotta have a guy who's stationed at it. So Asco County actually had every day, all day, you can't get into Asco County without going through a metal detector and talking to guys.
That's true.
Yeah, so, and
so
so it's just,
sometime along the line, they magically came up with the money.
well, it's our money. It's COVID money is what it is. And so there was a bunch of money got thrown at it, and they said, hey, this thing's really cool.
Which they could have taken your advice and just done a.
Well, I would have been much better to have a metal detector, if you ask me. I mean, a bad guy can come in and say, hey, I'm Joe Dunn.
Yeah, they don't detect.
Carry a gun and walk
So
in
you
and shoot
could,
somebody.
you can have a picture of the guy who kills people,
Yeah.
but people are
So
still dead.
Yeah.
So at this time, what would you do at
For
this
me,
time?
well, I don't think you could sell them, because this is the way anybody wants that. So I
Why would
would,
you remove them?
yeah, I wouldn't, I have to see no reason why they need to be there. Now, I don't know what state, the state court has said, if they demanded them to be there. Again, you get into some tricky stuff, I know Gary don't like that, but
No one's answered the question on whether or not the county is liable for that information.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's recorded or if it's saved.
I will say, having been to almost every commissioners meeting in the last year, you wouldn't believe how many people are wanting our information. And they bring forth, okay, you can use this software for real estate documents, you can use this. Every meeting, somebody is presenting and wanting the commissioners to buy something, which is data mining. They want our information. Where it goes, well, I've heard that John Hartley is very secure and does not let any of that information out. I don't know, okay? It's something that we have to be aware of, that everywhere, every place, people want our information. And I don't consent to having my information released like that.
Well, since I'm so in favor of having the kiosks there, as you can tell from my opinion, I think that information needs to be secured and really needs to be obliterated. Because what it comes down to, real quick, what it comes down to is you might be showing that you're interested in government, and there are entities that are interested in those that are interested in government. That's why we spend jail in January 6th.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have a second question for Craig, or?
I guess I do. I think you were there when I presented or at least one of the 3 times, presented the resolution. It was very clear cut. It had been passed by other counties. It wasn't elaborate. I know there's pros and cons to having an elaborate resolution to a clear cut one. Basically that they would not require a vaccine or as a term of employment for either employees, or would you have supported that resolution any of the 3 times I put it forth? Because our commissioner in District 2 voted against it all 3 times without saying why.
Yeah, well, so you and I talked several times, and I thought you had the patience of Job as you went through that process. What was most distressing to me was that there was, and I saw this happen on the school board during these times, is that boards that would hear public comment and then say nothing. And that, to me, I always, Gary, did I not always, anybody wants to talk, I mean, if we're gonna bring up resolutions, I can't think of anything that I said, no, we're not doing that. All you do is enrage public when you do that. And if you're not gonna sit up and say, I agree or I disagree with that, you're just gonna make people upset. So you went through a lot just to try to get to a vote. How many times did you present it before they even voted on it? Didn't you come in several times?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't even listen to it. So, and I did have an avenue into a few commissioners. I said, you guys gotta do something here. You gotta at least vote. I mean, even if you vote it down, do something. They finally were, I think, pressured into doing something. So, I would have voted for it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was not in favor of mandatory vaccination.
I think it's important to note though, that these two commissioners, if they were both on the board, we would not only have passed that resolution, but the tilt funds would have been returned. So I think that's huge. If you don't think votes matter, these are two votes that would have mattered.
I think Kiash will be done. Yeah. Okay, so, do you have a second question that you had?
Oh, I did, but boy, we've been talking so much.
All right.
I'm gonna go to Gary. I've been guessing question.
Well, you were asking about the resolution thing, in speaking. Now, you have to be careful, because I did object to Craig allowing the public to talk, because you have to understand, my wife and I, when Jack Bergman first got elected, and Chris, you were there, your husband was there. You want to talk about a meeting that gets out of hand. You have nothing there, you have no way of preserving the peace, and you can watch absolute chaos go. Now, I don't always like the way it goes, and I would say the agenda needs to be modified a little, but you know what? If the public has public comment, we're not supposed to interact with it. We were taught that in commission school, you do not do that. But it could be put on the agenda that it could be put on the agenda that we have commissioner comment at the beginning of the meeting. So, if a certain topic comes up, yes. You have to understand the agenda and the thing being done so sterile is for safety factors, that things don't get out of line. And there is a recourse to take legal action. I was at AAOC, one gentleman kept interrupting the meeting, the sheriff showed up and was ready to accommodate him for the night. So that's why we have these things in place.
So, not a rebuttal, but just maybe a clarification. I'm not in favor of the board sitting there back and forth with the public. That's not what I was trying to say. What I was saying was, when I've got a room full of people from the public and they say, we got this problem, there's 5, 10, 12 people who are saying it, it's gotta come up on that board. That board has gotta talk about it. I think your duty is to, unless it's so way off, off of the rails that you don't want to, but no, I think it's responsible of the board to hear that public comment and then address it.
Well, that's why you have things put in as new business or presentations.
Right.
Because they misuse the meeting too, because everybody comes at the beginning, public comment, and gives their report as,
What was one of my bugaboos was I didn't like, and they do it now all the time, so they'll be in public comment, and somebody will come up with, hey, we think that you ought to, give everybody ice cream. And then they'll make a motion right in the middle of public comment, second it, discuss it, and that's just not how you run a meeting. So it sounds like a little thing, but.
Okay, so the next thing that I had in mind, we're at the 8 o'clock mark pretty much, a little after, is the lightning round. The lightning round is basically yes, no, maybe a one-liner as to your answers. So we're going to start out with Article 5 Convention of States. Would you support an Article 5 Convention of States that solely targets problems of fiscal restraint, scope and jurisdiction, and term limits in regards to the federal government? Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, people have been, let me qualify it because I'm not an anarchist. People have been lazy. The voting public has been lazy. We don't need term limits. You need to get people voted out of office. It's a voter responsibility, John. That's my issue.
Okay. Okay. Oh, boy, let's see. Here we go. Marijuana. Would you be for allowing recreational marijuana sales here in Alcona County to help balance out the budget? Bob, we'll start with you.
No, it's funny because so many people think, I don't know how they got this idea that I was a left winger. Probably because I opposed the Alco Theater going in and that whole thing, and there's a bunch of other people who opposed that were also left wing. So somehow I got lumped in with that. So everybody thought I was gonna be a big supporter of the medical marijuana. I'm not. I mean, I have relatives who lived in Colorado that their towns have been ruined by the medical marijuana, or recreational, I'm sorry, not medical. It brings in an element that I'm just not in favor of. And does everything have to come down to money? I mean, why not have legalized prostitution if it makes more money? I mean, is that what it is? And we're just gonna legalize everything because it brings in money? No, I'm not in favor of it in the least.
Okay,
One of those resolutions I did write was against our representatives voting for legalized recreational marijuana.
okay,
And that's on record. I forgot what year I wrote it. Tom helped me draft it.
okay. Craig, how about you?
No, I wasn't, I voted against it then, I'm still against it. I was also in support of, you brought that up on our thing.
Yeah, I did.
So, yeah, that was a biggie. We, I don't think you were on the board at that time, Gary, but when we went to the hunt millage. So, that was a big deal, and it was pretty shocking. It went down that this county decided it didn't want to pay for any more drug enforcement, but
And that'll, to my next point, would you like to see hunt in this county? And would you spearhead an initiative to bring it here, potentially put it on the ballot to get it passed? And we'll
is that
start
for
with you.
me?
Yeah.
So hunt costs money. I mean, that's exactly what it is. So for those that don't understand, hunt is the Heron Undercover Narcotics team. They're based out of Alpena at the state police post. The way it has worked for Alcona in the past, we provide a deputy free of charge, basically, to the team. Right now, that's probably to the tune of about $80,000 to $90,000 for that deputy with all his benefits and everything. So he is on the team, he's undercover, they work in Alcona, Alpena, they do whatever. When we had a hunt millage on, that's what that went for, was to pay for that deputy to be on that team. When that millage fell and did not get repassed, we no longer could afford to do that. We still get some hunt coverage. I mean, you've probably seen, there's been some busts in Alcona. We don't get the kind of coverage. I mean, obviously, Montmorency County has a deputy on, Alpena does, I think Presqu'île does. So that they're gonna they demand more coverage because they're paying more than we are. I definitely would want that back on again. I think we should certainly have it. And it's not about marijuana anymore. Marijuana's legal, so that's not the deal. We have meth, we have heroin, we have fentanyl that's coming in like crazy. Alpena is actually one of the, I was in many hunt meetings, and just several years ago, Alpena is like little Detroit up there as far as stuff coming in and then getting processed out. It's a mess.
Okay, how about you, Bob?
I would say a qualified yes. If I saw objective evidence that studies have been done, that these kind of things help and can be proven that they're effective, then I would say yes. But I would need to see that. I would need to get something other than the hunt people telling me, oh yeah, it works. I would need to have objective third-party research that says it does help. Having said that, if it entails another millage, I can think of other things that the county might be able to need a millage pass for that I think would take precedence over that.
Okay, Gary.
I've always had a problem originally with the way that the government had done its confiscations. So usually that's why I oppose the hunts. But I've had a change. It's important. And the one thing that wasn't brought up about hunt, I used to be in the engineering department. I used to work in the automotives. Throwing stuff away is not easy anymore. You have PCB transformers, you have things have to be disposed of in a certain manner. When you put together a meth house, you just don't throw it away. The disposal costs will kill you. Being a part of the hunt, they pick up part of the cleanup bill. That's the biggest, because a couple of cleanups in Alcona County, where the county pays for it, you can forget all about the budget. Because that EPA stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
But that's another conversation.
Oh, okay. Okay, so one of the other things that was brought up in Mankato Township at the Planning Commission is they are talking about solar farms. DTE, Consumers Energy, they're looking to put solar farms in Alcona County because apparently Alcona County is a prime setup for land for it. I don't know how that works, but apparently, yes, we are number one. Are you for or against solar farms? And let's see.
Let's start with Craig.
Okay, we'll start with Craig.
Well, that's quite a question. So as a farmer, I own land and I've gotten several of these brochures that are gonna pay me gobs of money to give them my land and cover it with solar panels. Talked to a lawyer about it once and he said, no, you gotta watch. He said, these guys, they'll come in, because the lease payment alone was crazy. I mean, you could have bought the land for the amount of money they wanna lease it for. And so I'm like, what's the deal? What's the catch? He said, well, a lot of these places will come in and in 3 years they go bankrupt and you're left with the cleanup of 80 acres of solar panels. So that kind of slowed me down and cooled me off on it. You know, it's like electric cars and electric everything else that we want. I'm not against an electric car. I'm not against an electric tractor. I'm not against anything. I don't want to be forced to buy it. I don't want to be pushed into buying it because I can't, because you've made everything else so expensive. And I want it to be as efficient and good as what I have now or better. I don't think anybody in here is gonna argue that. If electric is gonna do me what I need to do, I'm good with it. But right now, electric will break our grid within 36 hours if we did what they want us to do. That's ridiculous. Solar panels, they're not pretty. They're not as pretty as windmills, I guess, but yeah, I served on the Harrisville Township Zoning Board, and I mean, you had people upset because there's a junk car in their neighbor's yard. Imagine if all you looked at was solar panels next to you for the rest of your life. I don't know if people would like that, so.
Okay, Bob.
I would have to see the research, and the cost and the benefits. I would disagree. I think windmills are completely hideous. I would never approve windmills strictly from that reason. However, the solar, I would have to see the research and I would have to see the details. I think he brought up a good point, you know, what's the economics of it? What's hidden, what's the catch? But definitely never windmills. I would fight that with every inch of my being.
That was Karen, yeah. Do I need to mute her?
I was trying to tell
She's
you.
been mostly quiet for quite a while, so. And we'll move on to you as well.
Well, we've
solar
been-
farms.
We've been having Consumers Energy come out to our township. They've already announced that 2025, there will no longer be fossil fuel electricity.
Yeah, right.
So we're going with weather-dependent energy. You hear about all this stuff. I'm having problems. I don't know how they're gonna have the panels so far away from the batteries because I understand the electrical was what I grew up with. So that's what I was trained in. So, all this stuff just doesn't work. Now, my former boss had died and went to Texas. He was down there when all this weather-dependent energy was down there. And we saw how fast all of Texas froze up. I was teaching a constitution class. I had a 2-week delay on books because everything was frozen, not moving. We're putting all our eggs in one basket, and the basket's about to fall, and I think we're gonna find out what happens to the product inside the basket.
Okay.
I have one thing. I'm highly suspect of anything the current man in the White House is promoting or the man who was before Trump is promoting. So it would have to do a lot of overcoming. If they're promoting it, I naturally am opposed.
Okay, critical race theory / social emotional learning. Are you guys aware that it is being pushed a little bit here in Alcona County? Are you for or against it? Gary, we'll do you first.
Okay. I was watching Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck was explaining Juneteenth. I kind of get to agree with him. Dealing with the current American population is like dealing with a box of rocks. Not much there. We're easily swayed because we do not know our history. This Juneteenth stuff is way out of kilter. What they're teaching about Black history, or what supposedly this country was like, is extremely out of kilter. Understand, I go through a division called Wall Builders. I know David Barton, I know the family. They've got original source documentation. You know, do you know how many Black people were involved in the Revolutionary War that had officers' rankings? And all the foreigners and everything else. And we got people telling us that we were a nation built on slavery, and we're the only ones that had slaves. Of course, when I read that book that's supposed to be called the Bible, weren't the children of Israel in slavery too? I mean,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so I take it you're against it.
In spades. As a matter of fact, my resolution, you remember the last one, the one that got us county fame? But I also wrote that resolution about misinterpreting of Black. And remember, how many Black people did I put in that resolution? A lot.
Wow.
I am lucky that I am married to Alcona County's expert in social emotional learning. We have been to every school board meeting. I've missed a couple. She's been to every school board meeting in the last year. I assure you, CRT is in our schools. Do they say we're teaching CRT? No, that would be too obvious. It's called social emotional learning, or it's called Positivity Project. The tenets of critical race theory have been put into how teachers teach, how they interact, what's going on in the school. So as you know, my wife is running for school board. We have made numerous comments to them as to why are you doing some of these things. Lisa researches every day on things that are going on around school boards around the country. So no, we have fought them. We recently, Lisa challenged several books in the school board that had pornography in them. That's a whole other story. They did not take them out of the school. So it's a battle, but no, obviously I'm opposed to that.
I can't add any more. No, I'm a no, but.
Okay, flat out. The next one follows right in line with that, and that is the LGBTQ agenda. Would you stand up to Biden's Title IX threats and perhaps the school board to make them fall into line with boy, girl?
What a mouthful thought.
I know, right?
I'll take that.
Bob,
We recently wrote a letter to Superintendent O'Connor saying, are they going to put a urinals or a bathroom in for transgenders, whatever. I can't remember exactly what. And he said, I'm not aware of anything that's that. Well, we found right online that the Department of I believe it's Department of Agriculture has issued, under Biden administration, issued these directions that they have to provide a transgender bathroom. And so he either wasn't aware of it or wasn't telling us that he was aware of it. Where does it stop? But this is a whole other issue that there is a directive that has been put out that they are going to have to do something. So it is going to come up in front of that board sooner or later.
okay. Yeah, for those who don't know, Title IX, it's one of the things that provides school lunches for the children. So basically he's withholding food unless the schools open up to the transgender movement, however you want to put it. So we'll move to Craig on that one.
No, I wouldn't support, I'm against the transgender agenda all the way around, but also I just kind of draw this back in, so I've been a commissioner for 6 years, many times people would ask me, well, why can't you do something in the school, why can't you do this? So county commissioners have nothing to do with the school, absolutely nothing. What we do have though is, and if you keep that avenue of conversation up is influence. It's relationships, building relationships with the leadership there, being able to talk with them and try to guide them in certain things. But as far as the county commissioner being able to do anything, I mean, yeah, you're only one step above us. Yeah, there's not a lot. But
You can do something.
Well, let me finish. So I did bring this up to Dan O'Connor. This was after, I think it was 3 years ago. I don't remember what the issue was, because there was a resolution on the,
I brought one before
Yeah.
I became a commissioner.
yeah, that's right. I supported that. I remember that. And that's, and so I told, can I keep going? So this is a little provocative, but so Dan, you know, how many federal dollars do we get from the federal government? It's not a big amount of money. I think it's less than $1 million. It might be 400,000. You might know.
I think it's 2.2 million.
Is it 2 point, is it that much? I thought it was less than that 3 years ago.
Taxpayers, 2 million from the
The
Fed.
Fed, 2 million from the Fed, 5 million from the community. It was in the last budget just last week.
Yeah, so with 2 mil millage in our county, we could 86 federal funding and make our school, Alcona school only. You know, so you wouldn't need any federal funding. You'd make it a charter school basically. I told Dan that, and he was like, oh, we couldn't do that. That'd be way off, but I think it's a good idea. So-
Why did he say we couldn't do that? What?
Ryan Kelly wants to.
Yeah, well, because obviously,
Out of the box.
Anyway.
yeah, it's out of the box. It's
Well, let's go. First of all, yeah, there is a way. You keep the millage off the ballot and the schools don't get any money. That's one way of handling it. Because remember, we allow millages on the ballot. If the school wants to bring forth a millage, we just don't put it on. I mean, you know, you have to understand, you know, we have that power. But that's how I got my start, Carrie, remember? My wife and I got involved with the Republican Party over the gay marriage thing, how 5 unelected lawyers could overdo what a lot of states want. And then we got into the schools, we got into the transgender, genderbread man. You know, we, the Republican Party, wrote resolutions against this stuff. Now, I have relatives that are in education and complete idiots, I guess, because they came up with the perfect idea on this transgender thing. It's like, well, there's a bathroom up in the library in the offices, and there's only 2 kids out of 132 that don't know what they are. Why don't they use that bathroom? So, you know, but again, you get the government in here and it comes up with an unreasonable solution. And that is the problem. And the biggest problem we got, you know, the population of transgender and homosexual used to be about 1.5%. Now all of a sudden they're finding out it's 30%. So you have to ask yourself the question, is somebody inflating figures or is something going on? And I'm of the opinion, something's going on. Our kids are being groomed and changed. We've thrown God out of the classroom. We've thrown anything religious and moral out of the classroom. And when you do that, a vacuum opens, and this is the vacuum that is open.
Okey dokey. Excellent. Do we have any questions from the peanut gallery? Linda?
I would like to know what each person's opinion is, if you would support receiving funding in order to support red flag laws. So if there was a resolution, let's say we drafted a resolution saying that we did not support red flag laws, would you support that? What is your opinion of red flag laws?
You go first.
I think we're gonna get funding if we support it, is what just came down yesterday.
Oh, wow, I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
So everybody knows probably here what red flag laws are.
And that would be the one where the sheriff can come to your house without a warrant and take your guns.
Right.
Okay.
So, no, I'm not in support of that. Now, I will say that there needs to be more funding for mental health. I do think there are those that we need to have a better system to be able to take a look at people who are a danger either to themselves or their family. When I first heard about red flag laws, I thought, well, it seems reasonable, because I know a few people that probably didn't, or shouldn't have guns. And then I heard about the bad side of it. Ex-spouse, friend, neighbor says he's crazy and he's got guns. And how do we address that? We're not a perfect society and the system isn't perfect. So I don't know how to address that. I do think we need, not necessarily red flag laws, but I do think we need to have something in place to be able to say, hey, this person, I mean, how many of these shootings have we seen?
But I think we have it right now. If you call the sheriff and say, you know, I know this guy,
Well-
and then they start looking out for him.
What we do have is, so interestingly enough, I mean, they're very upset the NRA lobbies Congress for millions of dollars, but they don't talk about how much Facebook and Twitter and other social media sites. So please tell me how I can get banned on Facebook because I say something I shouldn't, but a kid in Texas can say all kinds of crazy stuff and nobody goes and visits and says, hey, here's a problem here. So I think there has to be a way to be able to see how do we address those people who are a danger,
Fit between the cracks.
who slip between the cracks. So not as it stands, I mean, and I don't know the real answer. There was a case in Alcona County here 4 years ago where there was someone in Glenny who had their guns confiscated. I don't know, Drew, you know anything about that? You remember that? There was an issue and he had his guns confiscated and it went through, because there is a process now for that to happen. It isn't a red flag law, there is a process. The judge gets involved and they can confiscate the guns. They were kept at the sheriff's department until he received whatever, a clean bill of health, and then he got them back. So not just a, hey, red flag law, you say something crazy, we take your guns. No, I'm not supposed to.
As I understand it, in the recent bill that was just passed, there's incentives
Correct.
to accept these or institute these red flag laws. And as I understand it, there's already rules and laws on the books to keep people who are mentally ill from getting a license. I love the idea because it falls in with what we have found in every meeting we've gone to, it all comes down to the money. The school put masks on the kids because they got money. They said they would vaccinate the kids because they'll get money. There was money available, COVID money. I'm all for taking all of the money that can be taken as long as there's no strings attached.
As long as you don't take it right.
Whenever there's strings attached, I would vote to who wants to do, when does it come down, when do we say no? I'm not going to take your money, it's just too much. You can wave all the money you want in front of us, I'm not gonna take it if I have to sell my soul. I think that's a fabulous answer, but I love how they put that there for incentives for
Yeah, right.
people to
We
do the
live
red
in a
flag
state
law.
that's incentive.
If I could dovetail on what he just said, so it is about the money, and I've watched school boards, township boards, and county boards won't do things because they don't want to lose the money. It's not just getting it all the time. How many times have you heard, well, we can't do it because if we will lose the money. So you're right. Once you sell your soul, it's a pretty tough thing to say no. Because you're gonna lose the money.
Go ahead.
Red flag laws, easy, no. Problem isn't, this is what I brought up in Commissioners Board, and you like what I said. The problem isn't the nut with the gun. The problem is I'm a law-abiding citizen, and there are places that I'm allowed to carry a gun, and then there are places that I'm told I'm not allowed to carry a gun. Why am I trusted in some places but not all places? And the problem is I can deal with that nut with a gun, as could everybody else in this room.
If the police.
That's the problem. You don't need a red flag law. If you're worried about your boyfriend coming back to harm you, you get a gun for yourself, and if he shows up, you deal with him. Simple.
Thank you.
It is that simple.
Okay, any other questions? Down at the end, yep, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you, go ahead.
You brought up mental health. What can you guys do about, like, the mental health facility, use South Valley, for example, that, they literally take people, my instance, my kid's mom, I don't know what her mental health issue is, but the counselor pretty much told her she can do what she wants as long as she barks like a dog when it's over and claims mental health. And they're pushing it into schools, medicating the children. I think about 50-some% of our Oscar County's kids are on Ritalin or some sort of medication. What can you guys do to stop that?
Just, so to stop them from doing things?
To just get rid of these agencies that are all about just pushing drugs to make money.
Yeah, well, it's a tough one. I mean, the doc probably knows more about that than I do. I happen to have a copy of the budget. I mean, the county spends $34,000 a year for mental health. We give that to Northeastern, or what is it?
Northeast Community Mental Health.
Community mental health, so we do invest in mental health. But I think and Gary will attest to this, every meeting we've ever been in with them, they say they're woefully underfunded.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough money to take care of the problems that they have. Now, I don't know what the particulars are that the doctors are doing. You know, I'm not in favor of throwing drugs at every problem either. I think whether they're legal, illegal, or recreational, they're not the answer. So,
I mean, with, like the South Valley, you have people that are counselors that probably shouldn't be counselors. They have mental health problems themselves.
so as a commissioner, as commissioners, they do report to us. You sat on that board, didn't you?
Well, yeah, because I insisted we have a commissioner
Right.
that sat on the board.
So there is input from the commissioner level, and so things can be brought up. So if there was an issue, and this is one of the roles of a commissioner, so you have an issue. So you go find your commissioner and you say, hey, I don't like this. I don't like what's happening. Ideally, the next time Gary's at that board meeting, and I've done it in Department of Health meetings, you've probably done it in other meetings, you raise your hand and you say, hey, I got some constituents who have a problem with this. That's one of the roles of a commissioner, as a county commissioner, because we serve on several different boards. So to say I can stop that from happening, not necessarily, I mean, but I can definitely, as a commissioner, go in and raise my hand at the big board and say, there's a problem here, and 9 times out of 10, they'll look into it and they'll give you an answer. So that's what I would do for you.
So yeah, I'd say contact your commissioner when he gets elected.
Well, I'm in Alcona County.
Oh, okay.
My case, my court case is out by hospital.
Oh, okay.
My daughter was being forced to go to South Valley on her mom. Was trying to force, ADHD meds and asthma meds and all kinds of stuff. And in the end, we found out that none of that was true and they should have never prescribed it. And that counselor was terminated, but South Valley definitely has a big issue with hiring people that have mental health problems themselves.
And they're actually in another territory, they're not part of Northeast Michigan.
Okay, was there any more questions?
I just have a quick one.
Okay,
Yeah,
Lisa.
for Gary. I thought you had said that, or that I heard you say that you wouldn't have voted for the vaccine, for the vaccine mandate. So, and this time I heard you say you did, so I want to make sure I was clear.
I didn't vote for any vaccine mandate.
No, I know, but would you, as a commissioner, Bob brought that up, would you have voted, because I heard you say I
Oh,
had.
heck no, come on, I mean, the thing is, you've got a right of conscience.
Right,
And if your right of conscience, and this is everybody's got this fallacy, the First Amendment talks about, when it talks about the religious thing where Congress shall make no law, nor restrict the free exercise thereof. Religion is a small part of it. The biggest part of it was your right of conscience. And Jefferson addressed it, Madison addressed it. It bothers me because people say, well, that was back then. Well, what people don't realize is, these documents that they wrote are 250 and 240 some years old. I mean, the average length of any constitution in any country is about 17 years. And a lot of them are dealt with also with bloody revolutions in the process.
so as a commissioner, would you have voted for or against the vaccine mandate? I thought you heard
I
you
would
say it
vote
was correct.
against. I would vote against the vaccine mandates.
Okay.
I would have voted in favor of the resolution.
Of the resolution, I thought I heard you say
Okay.
it said it was crap, so that's why I'm asking, that originally it was in.
No, I think we were talking about,
Turned out. That's all right, just
No.
curious,
I'm
I heard
glad-
two things, that's why I'm trying to get it, yes, because that's it, just make it.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Gary.
Alrighty, with that, let's give our. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I jumped the gun. 3-minute closers for my.
Yeah, final comment.
Final comments, and we'll start with you, Bob, because you're like.
Final comment, how many of you have ever had two commissioners that have been talking about all the things that have been going on? I'm assuming very few, if ever, has this happened, where you can ask things that have been happening, because most of us haven't gone to the meetings. So in a perfect world, we would have a newspaper. We would have a reporter there going to the commissioners' meetings and reporting what happened. We know that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. Lisa goes to every meeting. She takes the notes. She distributes them to every person, but you're never going to get something like this where you have two people who are commissioners talking about why things happen. So, I mean, it's fabulous. If none of us can learn anything, we learn that we have to become more involved. We have to, neither of them got experience being commissioners before they were commissioners, but you're talking about how many 10 years worth of experience here, that at least 6 and 4?
Yeah, I was in for 6, yeah, 4.
Yeah, so you know that the issues that commissioners face, and the one thing I think we all need to remember before the next election is that all of us have to do something more. Whether, not all of us have to run for a commissioner, but we have to become more involved, whether it be at the township level or a group like this, because we can't go back. This isn't 2016, this isn't 2018, this isn't even 2020. We've got to build something for the future. All of us have to get more involved. I'm glad that we've gotten some clarity on the pill tissue, that both these commissioners would be in favor of that. The vaccine mandates or resolutions. The one thing we never talked about is the Veterans Affairs, and how far that has fallen and what the commissioners would do to try to rectify that. I wish we could talk a little bit more about what we can do to make the veteran situation better.
Do we not have time for another question? We do actually, so I mean, if anybody needs to leave, you're more than welcome to leave if you need to, but.
Well, I'll talk about the veterans, I was pretty heavily involved.
Okay,
Like, here's my big
yes, please.
So Art Winter used to be our Veterans Affairs officer. Art was in the downstairs where the secondary courtroom is now, and he served there for quite a few years. He was 9 hours a week, I believe it was. That's all the funding we had for that position. Art started to groom Tony Atkinson, who was actually our janitor at the time, and Tony's a vet, and he started taking an interest, and Art wanted to get out, so Tony took it over and started to grow the office. Tony went, I don't know anybody know Tony in here? Any veterans who dealt with him? He's awesome, he's great. And so Tony, he went 100 miles an hour to learn this job and basically grew something out of very little. Alcona County has 2,500 veterans in it by the count, which is huge compared to other counties. It's probably because we're right next to a retired Air Force base is what happened. But so as Tony grew that, we moved him out of, and I know Pat's Smiley. He was not happy about that, but we moved him down to the MSU building. And the idea was there's more room and then it would be great and you can be there. So that, we got him down there, it worked for a while, but they didn't have secure internet. And the federal programs that he was dealing with had to be inside of our shell that was the county building. The IT guy said, I can't protect them down there from whatever. So we brought him back. We actually took that room, he said it was a closet, but it's actually a photo or a microfiche room. Cleaned that all out, refurbished it, put them in there. Now, all the time this was going on, he's building numbers, he's getting more people coming in, and I said all along, as you build, and then they got a $50,000 state grant, I said, we'll just keep adding on. I mean, we're not gonna throw the whole boat at it right out of the gate. Let's see what you have and what you can do. So, from my understanding, they've gotten to the point now where they have a lot of vets that they're servicing. They need more room, they need more whatever, and they would like a new building of their own. I have no problem with that.
The jail.
What's that?
The jail.
The jail, yeah. There's a lot of spots in there, but I don't think that's. So the last, I think I heard they wanted to go down here, the DDA in Lincoln has given them a piece of property, or I don't even know if that's happened yet. The only fly in the ointment at this point is, and this goes to the current board, I don't want to insult any of them, I guess I would go at, Bill, because he's on personnel. It seems that, and I watched the meeting, I YouTube them, I don't always go in there, so I watch them on the live, what is it called now? Zoom meetings. And, it was pretty contentious, and I was a little disappointed that, when I saw that, there's a lack of communication and a lack of leadership on somebody's part. I don't know if it's Adam or if it's personnel, but somebody has not been communicating with these guys in a way that satisfies them. And
Well,
they're
Terry
very,
sits on, just for clarification, Terry sits on the Veterans Committee.
yeah. So, I tried, and anybody who knows me, I go out of my way to try to have a conversation with you and try to understand where you're at. I may not agree with you, I may not be able to satisfy anything you want, but I do go out of my way to talk to you. And it seems like these guys feel like they've just been ignored, and that has caused some real consternation. There's no problem with them getting the building, but they think the county board is against them, and it's a back and forth. It has to stop. We have to service our vets. If they need a building, let's get them a building. If they've got the monies, let's do that. Has to be done properly. They have to understand that it's still a county building, and they can't just do whatever they want either, because the county is gonna own that building, and if something happens, they don't wanna get that building back or something that isn't usable. So I think, and I hope it's happening, I don't know for sure, but they need, both boards and both chairs have to get together and start trying to figure out what the issues are and work them out. That's part of their job. You gotta sit down with people who disagree with you and try to come to a resolution. So I don't know if that helps you at all. I mean, they definitely are growing, they definitely need more space. Tony's doing a great job, probably gonna get another guy, is what they want, or another person, doing all kinds of great stuff.
It is on my understanding that they turned down, no, forget it, I'm sorry, it was somebody else they turned down to raise.
Okay.
Yeah, there was something, Tony wasn't there.
Thought that,
The board gave them more money and then, that was it.
yeah, it's something, but
Okay, 3-minute closer for you, and then we'll get back to you with 3-minute closers, okay?
3-minute closure. Basically, we're servants of the people. Our job is to promote the general welfare, which is social. Our job is to make sure that people have their God-given rights protected. And I admire this guy because I was where he was 7 years ago. It takes work. It takes standing up and standing out. And that's what you need. You need to be able to rock the boat and make noise when it's necessary. The other half is you can put all the great people you want on the board, and if they're not supported, nothing's going to happen anyways. I mean, I have dealt with things with district health, and when you got things being done and people say, well, I'm not being treated right and fairly, and yet they don't want to come and get involved, it's hard to fight the issue alone. I've not been afraid to stand alone. I have been a fly in the ointment of district health. I haven't been the one that votes no most often. And it's not because I'm a rubber stamp that votes yes all the time, because he said I vote no. Nobody asks me why I vote no. Why would I vote down a 911 millage? Well, they're charging you too much money, and it's not a fair tax. If you have a phone, and my wife and I, we have 3 phones, we don't pay $3 a month, we pay $9 a month. But if you get an Obama track phone or something like that, you pay nothing. If you are on your family's calling plan someplace else, you get nothing. So the poor saps that live here that got 1, 2, 3, or multiple phones in a family, they get stopped. My job is to be the voice for the people and say, look, this isn't fair. Is there another way of taxing things? That's what I'm looking at. I want people to be equally taxed for equal service. I want to defend people's God-given rights. That's why I took this job, and I will fight hard to do it if I get it back. And if I don't, well, then I guess maybe the county gets what the county gets.
All right.
Well, first, thank you, Gary, for doing all this. This is pretty neat. And thank you for all of you. You guys seem to keep your attention. I didn't see anybody doze off because it seems like it's kind of monotonous to listen to this kind of stuff. But I enjoy it. I enjoy interacting with people. As a commissioner, I don't know of anybody in this room other than Drew that I've stood over the back of the pickup and talked quite a bit. I think Judy and I have talked, but I'm always available. I was always available and always will be. That's one of my, I enjoy talking with people. I enjoy hearing what the issues are and what it is that I can do to help you. Felt that way all along as a commissioner. I would appreciate the vote and the support of this body and this group of people. I think Bob's a great guy, and as he said in the beginning, and I'll return the favor. I would definitely support you if that's where we go. I do think I have a lot to offer. I have a lot of experience, and I know a lot of the problems that we're dealing with, and I think I can hit the ground running pretty fast to address them. I've enjoyed this time, and there is one little thing that I would say. And Gary, I hope will chuckle at this. So when we were dealing with the LGBTQ stuff, and I remember, I think I said it to you, I said, where's all the Republican people? I mean, we had 50, 60 people that were, left, and just hammering on us. And Bob said it really well. You got to get involved. You got to be out there. You got to be at the meetings. I will say that, I pushed hard to get our meetings on Zoom and keep them on Zoom. I think two of the commissioners were trying to get that axed and stop the Zoom meetings. I hope that'll never happen if I get in there. Those will always be on, and they're there in perpetuity. In fact, one of the good parts of the YouTube video, I think it was the second meeting in, and Bill, it was an open mic, so you can watch some hot mics. And he was leaned over and so they had gone over the budget, and they talked about 2020. And one of Bill's big issues when he ran against me was we were spending money we didn't have, and there was budget problems. And he leans over after they looked at the numbers. He says, "So things are actually pretty good, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Oh, okay." So that's on YouTube. You can see it. All right. So I felt good. I want to get a clip of that and put that out there. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all the great questions. I think it was fruitful for me. I hope the other two guys did too. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right.
I think I had a couple of things.
Real quick.
I don't know if I got my full permit. I think, as I said before, I've supported Craig in the past. I voted for him. I certainly will vote for him again if he wins the primary. I think it's important to know, keep in mind why he lost, because he did stand up on an issue that was tough. And some of the people that did oppose him because of Michigan's primary laws obviously crossed and voted for his opponent in the primary, who was running as a Republican, who was not a Republican. So he paid the price. I'm not running against him. He's on my team. Anybody in the Republican group here knows I had quite a few inventive ideas that would maybe prevent that ever from happening again. And I'm happy that we're gonna have at least one true Republican and through to the November general. Oh, and by the way, District Health Department, their recommendations are what led the school to put masks on the kids. So if there was a different health director like other counties that did, in particular Montmorency, where they went to the health department and said, look, if you vote to put masks on kids, you have no future in this county. If our board had done something similar to this health department, our kids would not have been masked.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.